Tuesday to all. And this beautiful Tuesday, July 21st, 2026 in Santa Cruz. Once again, welcome to At the Table with Crucian Educator. It's my pleasure to serve as the host for this 1 hour radio talk show. As you know, there's a primary election coming up. There are exactly 10 days left before primary election day, which is on Saturday, August 1st, 2026. And early voting has begun yesterday. So it's critical that we all are paying attention to all those candidates who are officially on the ballot for the primary elections. We have four candidates in the race for delegate to U.S. House of Representatives. And I have in the studio of 970 AM WSDX, we have Terry Helenese in the studio. And so we'll welcome her. And I'm excited to hear her presentation. Welcome.
Good morning, Verdell, and at the table with Crucian Educator supporters and listeners. I am Terry Helenese, the wife of Alex Diabru, the mother of Gabrielle and Crystal Diabru, and the daughter of Roman Catholic Deacon Arnold Helenese, who served the Catholic Diocese here in the Virgin Islands for nearly 50 years. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Verdell, and I am ready to take your questions and let's get at it.
Okay, I see and she was prompt and ready to begin the show. Uh, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone. I usually do. We are live on in the studio of 970 AM WSDX. However, this show is not being aired on the radio due to technical difficulties, but it is being recorded. It's streamed on YouTube and also on Facebook Live. So those of you who are listening, you are probably watching this video live on Facebook. You are allowed to call in, but we'll first have the guest, who's a candidate for the delegate to U.S. House of Representative, to be interviewed. And you will be allowed to call in later on the show. The numbers are 340-773-0390 and 340-773-0490. Well, my first question is, what inspired you to seek the position of delegate to U.S. House of Representatives?
Thank you for the question. So the Virgin Islands has been defined officially on the national level as poverty-stricken and disadvantaged. So I am currently 53 years old. This has been the definition for the last 53 years, for as long as I have known myself. So I have always wanted to improve the quality of life for Virgin Islanders and truly institute measures that move us from this poverty-stricken and disadvantaged official definition into the middle class. So a lot of my platform includes initiatives that help us to do that. that will help us to come off of those roles and help our families to earn more money, earn market value salaries, earn bonuses as we've started to do at Diageo's Captain Morgan. I'll get into that later. Just as a header, at Diageo, everyone gets a salary, but what we did there was we implemented a bonus for all employees, so for leadership and hourly employees. And I'd certainly like to bring in, I'd like to have new companies come in under EDA and otherwise, and really compensate our employees to those levels. So where every employee is not earning a salary, but they are earning a bonus. So we've got that. So ideally, it's really to improve the quality of life of Virgin Islanders and truly implement measures on the national level that begin to move us from where we are today at we're defined at the poverty level or economically disadvantaged, truly into the middle class.
Well, I appreciate that. And I too have an interest in how we could, in general, make the Virgin Islands of the United States a better place. So my other question is this. In your role, your current role, your position in our community, what ideas you have to enhance Virgin Islands pride, enrich the history, promote the culture, and again, make the Virgin Islands of the United States a better place?
Oh, so I've already began to do this, for example, with the Virgin Islands Madras. I was able to work with our team in Washington, D.C. to get it copyrighted. That way, Debbie's son, who is the designer of the Madras, and Bradley Christian, who is our revered cultural bearer, can really go into society and everybody else, Virgin Islanders and anybody else who reveres and who loves this Madras can use it in our carnivals, can make outfits, so it's multiplied. And when you think about culture, really, that's embedding our culture. Not only that, but I have been hugely instrumental in bringing the Equestrian Center to life. We will be having an Equestrian Center here on St. Croix. As we had the groundbreaking maybe about 2 months ago or so. I am responsible for working with an entity, a national entity, America 250, to clear the land for that site, where we will develop the Equestrian Center, where we will be able to bring in our youth to learn those skills, jockeying and horseback riding, veterinary medicine. So that way we are really pulling our kids from off the streets, anything that they would do that is not constructive and productive, and putting them in that environment really to learn those skills and, become our next jockeys and horseback riders, or go off into society here in the Virgin Islands and contribute in a meaningful way. So, and that in itself as well helps reduce crime. So you're taking away our kids from those elements and putting them in these constructive situations wherein they can go back or to their friends and say, hey, come along and let's do this. Let's enter this Equestrian Center and all of the other initiatives that come with that. So we begin to help with lowering crime.
Excellent. And I am familiar with your work, and I know you. And I know that you have been working on behalf with such project as the 175th
Yes.
Emancipation Celebration.
Yes. Yes.
However, your name is not easily recognized because you're
Sure.
working on behalf in Washington, D.C.,
Yes.
correct? So
Yes.
I want you to elaborate on specifically what is your role
Surely.
and how instrumental you were in the celebration of the 175th Emancipation Day.
Surely. So my role is based on my office is at 444 North Capitol Street in Washington, D.C. I
Mhm.
have since stepped down from the role to run for
Right.
office, but I was the immediate past U.S. Virgin Islands Director of State and Federal Relations and the Washington representative for Governor Bryan and the administration. And in that role, I work collaboratively with
Mhm.
Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, uh, her chief of staff, Angeline Muckle, and their team in Washington. You know, fortunately, they are also Democrats, so that's a great thing. But if
Mhm.
they were Republicans, I would work with whomever that was just as well. And I share that point to say that I have worked across the aisle for some time now. So um, I started off with working as a junior staffer in Washington, D.C. with Governor Roy Lester Schneider. I also worked as the director of public affairs for the legislature of the Virgin Islands. And after uh, Governor Schneider was no longer governor, I went into the private sector at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I worked for government clients, you know, as
Mhm.
a consultant for government clients, and I worked on the government computerized based patient record, which is today known as electronic health records. Um, and I've also worked for Deloitte on the transportation worker identification credential, which is a biometric card that really secures our nation's ports. And so when we hear these major projects actually
Mhm.
mandated by Congress, both of them, I have been working for the Virgin Islands now for 30 years, you know. So after that, of course, for the last 8 years, I have worked in Washington, D.C. at this role. And there are some key takeaways wherein uh, I worked on a strategy to obtain $1 billion for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico through Senator Mike Crapo, of course, on the Senate side.
Mhm.
He put the Virgin Islands on his back, as I've said and shared time and again.
Mhm.
And he wrote $1 billion in permanency into the big, beautiful bill that we do not have to go back begging for this money every 2 years or so. It has been being said on the campaign trail that Governor Charles Turnbull was able to get lock in 1325
Mhm.
back in 1999. That was not true.
Oh.
That was no, it was not true. Because think about it, if it was true, we wouldn't have to go back and fight for it
Exactly.
now, right?
Exactly.
So at that point they had given it to him, but it was never permanent. So it was Senator Mike Crapo
Uh-huh.
who gave it to us because it had lapsed in December of 2021. And so just to be clear, not just for the Virgin Islands, it had
Puerto
lapsed
Rico.
and Puerto Rico and other distillers. This is across the board.
Mhm.
So everybody had lapsed back to 1050. So that was the fight to move it from $10.50 to $13.25. Of course, you know, everybody in the Virgin Islands, everybody would want it to be $22 as another, my opponent is saying, but that is impossible. And by the way, in the year 2026, when we have a Republican governor, how would you move it? How would you then take it from 13, say
Yeah, president.
1325
Right?
to
You said
22
Republican governor.
I'm sorry.
President.
Yes,
Yes.
my apologies. A Republican president, President Donald Trump, who
Uh-huh.
is a Republican. My apologies about that. It is impossible because let me share. When Senator Mike Crapo wrote the $1 billion and permanency into the bill, we had to work to make sure that President Trump did not pull it out. There are things that we are not even discussing as to how we got that number to stay in the bill, right? Governor Bryan had some discussions with people in Trump's orbit to make sure that that $13.25 and permanency wasn't pulled out.
Okay.
So there's one opponent out there saying that she would work to get it to $22. I've got to say right now in 2026, that is impossible. And really, I will take it a step further and say that she's lying to the public because it is impossible to go from $13.25 to $22. Would I like the $22? Would all of us like the $22? Of course we would. But there is no way that that's happening in this political environment where we are now.
I agree. I totally agree with you, especially after hearing about this letter pertaining to allegations of fraud in the HUD program. So there's eye on the Virgin Islands as to fiscal responsibility. And I like to know though, you worked as a consultant,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And also we have the present delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett.
Yes.
What, and I'm pretty sure they have always had consultants. Okay, I'm learning that.
Yes.
That's something new to me. I didn't know. Could they work have been accomplished to get this permanent rate, which I believe there isn't anything cast in stone, like the US Constitution. It has been amended 27 times. So yes, it's possible to change that figure. But we know at this moment, it's highly
That's right.
unlikely. But my question is this. Could hit how instrumental you were, and did you work with the current delegate to the US Congress in achieving this? Could it have happened without your consultation?
So I will share that again. We worked collaboratively. Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, she had brought a bill. As I remember, it is Bill 1324, where she sought permanency and, of course, the increase. She brought a bill in the House, but there was no action taken. It wasn't, the bill didn't pass, right? Kevin Callwood is a lobbyist, and he's actually from St. Thomas. He is a registered lobbyist with the Clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate. And he is one of, he's on the Washington team, as well as Winston and Strawn, Squire Patton Boggs, and Ballard Partners. So what we did was we worked with the rum cover-over group, right, which included Bacardi and Crucian Rum and Sazerac and some of the other small rum brands. We walked to every member of, and had meetings with every member of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee to educate them on the importance of this lifeblood money for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And I will tell you that I maintained a spreadsheet. We have there about
Mhm.
100 senators, 100 Congress people in these committees. And what I did was I maintained a spreadsheet. We started with a spreadsheet that with yes votes, with no votes. And when we started this back in uh, the beginning of 2022, because it had lapsed in 2021, and I will share that actually Congresswoman Plaskett had came to Governor Bryan and said, Governor Bryan, I would like your help on this, because we've been working this, the number lapse, and we need to get it back. So as a collaborative effort, we started working on this. The governor's office and the congresswoman's office, and at that time it was Governor Perry Luisi from Puerto Rico in his office. So we all started working together. And at that time, there were different bills coming through the House that I have to tell you, every single bill that came through, we tried to put in a business case to include rum cover over. And each time we were defeated, we were struck down. There must have been three, four, five bills that we tried to attach ourselves to, and it didn't work. And at the same time, simultaneously, we were holding these meetings with the House Ways and Means and Senate Finance Committee to educate them that, whenever this comes up for a vote, we need your yes. We started at all no's. Everyone, we started from a blank slate, and we moved eventually from no in January of 2022 to yes from every Republican in July of 2025. That is how it passed. And again, we started with no's. They told us no for whatever their reasons were. And I still have this spreadsheet. I could go back to it. We moved them from no to every single Republican voting yes to have this put into, as Senator Mike Crapo had done, put it into the big beautiful bill, $1 billion and permanency for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So we were able to get the win on a Senate side. And so when we talk about Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and everybody else who supported us, we were all everybody is part of this win. Everybody played a hand in this. But truly, it happened in the Senate by Senator Mike Crapo, putting it in, into the $1 billion into the big beautiful bill.
I commend you. I commend you for. I think that's a great accomplishment. I don't take it lightly.
Yes.
And
thank you so much.
I realize now I have a better understanding of the work that you have been doing.
And I do want to share. So, for example, this happened because Kevin Callwood and Senator Crapo, they met years ago. They have a personal relationship. So during this time, Kevin Callwood's contract had expired, right? So he was no longer with us. And life is about relationships.
Exactly.
Everything in Congress is about relationships.
Definitely.
So I went to Governor Bryan and Director Nathan Simmons, and I said, we have got to bring Kevin Callwood back because he owns the relationship with Senator Mike Crapo. That is the only way we are going to get rum cover over. Otherwise, Crucian Educator, you and I would not be sitting here today, and we would not have the $1 billion for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. That would have been, a huge vacuum here in the Virgin Islands. So this is significant, and it is something to celebrate.
I agree with you. I supported the Diageo deal. I know it was highly controversial, but it's easy to point fingers, find fault, point out failures. But I know every administration, there are challenges. And I think that's a great achievement. Now, in your relationship, have you ever actually met in flesh President Trump?
I met President Trump way before when he wasn't president. Um, he had owned the Miss USA pageants, and I was a finalist for
Yeah.
Miss Virginia, and that is where I met President
Oh,
Trump.
interesting. I
But
learned something new. I
yes,
didn't know.
yes. But but now, so for example, in my role, I the governors have a yearly meeting with
Uh-huh.
the president at the White House. I prepare Governor Bryan for those meetings. I make sure he gets on the bus. I follow in my own vehicle to the White House. So just short of that, I prepare everything for Governor Bryan and the Chief of Staff to have that face-to-face meeting with President Trump. And I work with Susie Wiles,
Mhm.
President Trump's chief of staff, and at that time, because he's no longer there, the deputy chief of staff, James Blair. I work very closely with them, have face-to-face meetings with them, and the like. But in terms of meeting President Trump in his current capacity, I have not, but earlier on.
I'm sure you probably get to meet him once you get to Washington, D.C. Now, obviously, you're not a stranger in Washington, D.C., and you have established some long-term relationships that are to our advantage. I'd like to know when you compare yourself, your background to your three other opponents in this race, what advantages you think you have over them?
Oh my goodness. I would I would hit the ground running on day one. I have these earnest and honest bipartisan relationships, right, that I've made over the last 8 years. And I will say this, it's important to credit Kevin Callwood because anybody else in his position may not have made the introductions. He would take me to these meetings, introduce me to these meetings, and then stand back and have me develop and nurture these relationships by myself with his contacts, because we know Kevin Callwood's not going to be here forever, right?
Right.
And so that he did this because other people, male or female, would have been catty and would not have opened their Rolodex to pass the baton to me, knowing that for me. So, for example, I'm not going to be here forever as either. So, who am I going to pass the baton to? Who am I opening my Rolodex to? I'm not shutting Virgin Islanders off, but I recognize that we need to do. Kevin, in his mind, he has built a succession plan, and it has worked extremely well because we were able to get the $1 billion. We were able to save tropical shipping, for example. President Trump did a carve out for tropical shipping because when President Trump came in, he put these tariffs on Chinese built vessels. And at that time, many years ago, tropical shipping bought these Chinese built vessels, right? So this tariff that President Trump put on, we needed to work to get the carve out because otherwise they would have to be paying $1 million at every port of entry. That's not sustainable. And then that would make Virgin Islanders lose jobs. So it was either tropical shipping pull out or we band together, as we did, to save tropical shipping and all the ancillary programs and people under it, to save people's jobs, to save their lives, to protect families. So, it's things like that that I do. During the COVID years, I wrote a grant there. Governor Bryan had a different someone in there for policy and education. Very sadly, and may she continue to rest in peace, she passed. Governor Bryan gave me the project, and I authored this grant that we received $25 million. I did that.
Wow.
Back in 2019, I raised private sector funds. I worked with Housing, Parks and Recreation and the Department of Tourism. And we brought in, with private sector funds, of course, DC United, the Major League Soccer team, and we brought in the the Bermuda men's team to play an exhibition match, and they spent 5 days here. And DC United brought 100 season ticket members, so that was all of that money from those players and their families and season ticket holders put into our economy here in the Virgin Islands.
Mhm.
And the list goes on. The other significant thing that I did as a director, because as a congressperson, this would be one of my duties. A St. John small business, who owns vessels. Their vessel was seized in Mayaguez, Puerto Rico, for 6 months or so. And they had a team of people working with the Coast Guard to try to get it released. That didn't bear fruit. They engaged Governor Bryan, and he gave me the project, very much as when he gave me the project for to get the 25 million that we secured. He gave me that project, and I was able, because of my communication skills and my style. I'm not a rah-rah, and that's not who I am.
Right.
I work quietly and behind the scenes, and I get the job done. I'm not out there yelling and screaming, and I don't produce fruit. I work behind the scenes. I speak and walk quietly, but I carry a big stick. And when I intervened, the Coast Guard released that vessel.
Excellent. And I heard you mention your major was communication and
Yes.
statistics.
Yeah.
So I guess it's in line with
That's
what
right.
you've been doing.
Yes,
And
communications and
I know
statistics.
you have been sending regular reports on your work in DC, because
Yes.
I have read them
Yes.
on the chat line
Yes.
with Brian
Absolutely.
Roach.
Yeah. So
I
I've
knew
been.
what consistent. I can vouch
Absolutely.
for that.
Yes.
She has documented
Yes.
the journey.
Yes.
It's well documented. Anybody can go. I always say facts can be verified.
Yes. That's correct.
And so now here we are, and this 10 days before primary election, I'd like to know from you, how would you describe the state of the territory and what you believe are the 5 most important issues that must be addressed by the Virgin Islands government?
Absolutely. So we are in a state of progression.
Okay.
So from the standpoint of it is going to be very important to continue to work on these healthcare and equity issues. The 1108, striking 1108, which is in the Social Security Act, it is actually vestige. So we were able to get the FMAP at 83%, but because this 1108 language is still in there, it is important that we strike that, because what that does when we strike that, we are currently capped. So with that, we are currently capped at $20 million, which is what the Virgin Islands would get for uncompensated care in terms of payment. But if that vestige language is removed, if we strike that 1108, 100 up to 128, or at least 128 million would be coming into the Virgin Islands every year, and it would put us on par or on the same level with our states that receive this funding every year. So right now we're capped. So for example, imagine that after the $20 million is exhausted, our enrollees, right, they have to find the money. So if they need to go get checked, something's going on with their heart, or if they need to get eye exams, or something's going on, their kidneys are failing, they have to find the money. Where do people go get the money from? You know.
Mhm.
But if that number is risen,
Mhm.
we can begin to put ourselves on better footings. And by the way, move ourselves into the middle class because we're not handcuffed, right?
Mhm.
These funds are going to be opened up to us, so we're not begging for this money every year and it's capped. We're cut off after that. People have to find their money to live, really, or
Explain some more,
to stay
because
alive.
explain some more. Okay, some people at the debate at the uh, Sacred
Right. So
Educational Complex
yes,
auditorium,
yes.
I heard the comments. Nobody
Mhm.
would know what was.
So what this is, right? So when we hear everybody, so a lot of people are talking about the fix the Medicaid these Medicaid caps. It's a Medicaid
Medicaid.
cap, yes.
Medicare or
It's
Medicaid?
Medicaid.
Explain the difference,
Yes,
because
yes,
we have a lot of voters
yes.
that need to be educated.
Right, right.
What's the
So
difference between Medicaid
right.
and Medicare?
So they are both earned income benefits, right?
Okay.
One set is for our children and seniors. The other set is for our handicap, right?
Mhm.
And so what this earned benefit, right? A
Mhm.
benefit that you get payments for every year.
Mhm.
Medicaid, right?
Mhm.
In terms of the hospitals receiving payments. So, for example, when people go to the hospital
Mhm.
without insurance, right?
Mhm.
They're not able to pay or what have you. Our hospitals have to take them.
Mhm.
And so, from on the federal level, money is sent in here to the hospitals for Medicaid for people who cannot afford to pay,
Okay,
right?
Okay.
And so, this money in for the Virgin Islands and the territories is capped, right?
Mhm.
That cap is the culprit, as I said on the debate stage. The actual culprit is 1108, right?
Okay.
So that it is written in the Social Security Act right now to date. And we actually, and when I say we, I mean the Washington team,
Mhm.
there is language that we have gone to CMS, right,
Mhm.
to say this is the specific language that needs to be struck, right?
Okay.
But they have not listened or agreed with us. So
Mhm.
what we are doing now is, and when I say we specifically, I mean the Virgin Islands,
Mhm.
we are now we've been working with Senator Ron Wyden
Mhm.
to try to help us with this matter. Senator Maggie Hassan as well to try to help us to strike this language. But what I realize in terms of my campaign and everything that I've learned from meeting with Virgin Islanders is that we've been doing this as the Virgin Islands, working with these senators and House members. But I think and of course I'm manifesting a win. I'm not being fast and out of place, I'm manifesting a
Of
win.
course.
When I win as the next delegate to Congress, what I'm going to do is enlist the other territories so we have a stronger force to strike this vestige language. If we strike 1108, we would be moving to be on the level of the other states. So we would all of that funding, 128 million, would be open to us every single year. So that money would be sent down to our hospitals, to Schneider and to Wang Louis.
So is the cap the same for the four other unincorporated territories?
Yes, the cap is the same for the territories. Yes.
Okay.
So we are not,
And then
that's why I'm fighting for health care equity, because there's no equity. They're treating the territories differently.
Right. So you would say that's one of the main issue priority is this 1108
so
to be addressed.
That's one of them. The other thing that I want to do
is four more.
Yes, that's fine.
Yes.
Is in line. I would like to institutionalize, as I did over at Diageo with the bonuses for the hourly employees. I would like to have a veterans wing at Schneider and a veterans wing at Juan Louis. So that way, our veterans no longer have to travel to Puerto Rico and the mainland for service. And not only that, but to give them, so these hospitals now are being rebuilt. Of course, I would need to work with the next governor, whomever that is. I would, once we get through the primary, I certainly would like to schedule a meeting to determine how it is we could work with the builder of these two hospitals to get this done. And I mean top tier service to really do it up nicely for our veterans, and put up pictures of people in, our veterans and active military to show and appreciate, the people that work for us on a day-to-day basis. I would love that. I would love
you
to
would have
do
a
that.
facility on both St. Thomas and St. Croix.
Yes,
Okay.
a veterans wing at both hospitals.
Thank you.
Right. The other thing is on disaster recovery and working on these H-2B visas, which we have been working on. We met face to face again with James Blair maybe 2 or 3 months ago. James Blair is the former deputy chief of staff to President Trump. President Trump has actually moved him now, and that position is vacant. So we've been working with somebody new at the Department of Interior on the intergovernmental affairs on these H-2B visas. So it has been determined, right, and this is statistical information, that we would need at least, because the number could get higher, 5,000 new contractors to come in here and help us rebuild. So when you think about these hospitals that we're going to rebuild and just all the other rebuilding that needs to be done around here, we need people to help us. So our goal is to go back into perhaps the Eastern Caribbean and Latin America to get some of these workers who would get these H-2B visas. So I want to share, we know that there has been a halt in some cases on these visas. So we sat down with James Blair and we said, listen, we need a carve out, or even greater, when President Trump came in and laid down this tariff, it is impacting the Virgin Islands in a negative way. So he, at that point, had his senior staffer working on that, and we gave them the business case, and they agreed, and they said the Virgin Islands will be hearing from us in September with an official answer. And so that official answer is going to come down sometime in September. So we're anticipating and we're hopeful and prayerful that they would come back with a tariff, very much as they did for tropical shipping, on these, to give us these 5,000 H-2B visas that we would need people to help with our local workforce to rebuild the Virgin Islands in earnest.
And then you have any 2 other items?
Yes. So 2 other items would be working with, we've got to fix this problem with WAPA, as we know.
Yes, that's the big fat elephant in the room.
That's right. Just working on a federal level to remove the bottlenecks. At times it just takes, so for example, maybe these departments and agencies may be working in silos, not speaking to each other, and that little piece of communications would open something else up, or, open the result up. That, and working to get as much federal funding here into the Virgin Islands as I can, whether it's formula or otherwise. I'm huge on that. And the last thing would be bringing a feed mill here. So, for example, all of our nutrients and minerals that our farmers feed our animals, right? The cost of that is extremely high. Right now, they purchase from a feed mill in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico has the lion's share of business across the Caribbean, right? So right now, our farmers are sourcing from Puerto Rico. If we were to institutionalize, if we were to develop a feed mill here
Mm-hmm.
on St. Croix, where we have the land to, we could certainly service ourselves, which would enable food security, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we could sell to the Eastern Caribbean because, again, right now, Puerto Rico owns all of that business.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could cut into that, and so for anybody that's listening, you probably saying, well, where's she gonna get the money to do this? What stupidness is this woman talking about? So as a delegate to Congress, right, you get each, the senators and Congress members, they get up to 15 community projects funding,
Mm-hmm.
up to 15 that they can package,
Mm-hmm.
15 of their favorite projects. So that would be the feed mill would be one of mine, one of
Okay.
my 15 that I would submit next March, in March of 2027, to receive this feed mill, to receive the funding to get this feed mill on St. Croix. That would be one of my first in my first 15 that I submit
Mm-hmm.
to receive here for the Virgin Islands. And the reason, like you may have heard me say, just call me the queen of pork, because whether it's by formula or poking around to find out, other monies other than formula funding that I could send down to the Virgin Islands, that would be, how I would do it. I would, just as I'm doing now, identify whether it's cost savings, identify money in a department that has not been obligated or drawn down.
Mm-hmm.
I would work in my role as the next congresswoman to do this. So not just on formula funding that all the states and territories receive, but I would poke around just as former Senator Robert Byrd, he's passed now.
Yeah.
He started out as a segregationist, but became a Democrat out of West Virginia. They called him the king of pork because he would look around besides the formula funding. And mind you, you can go and check this yourself. He is one of President Obama's favorite senators, favorite people. President Obama gave his eulogy. He would go and poke around all over in Congress and nationally for pork, for monies to send back to West Virginia. And so when you hear me say that I will be the queen of pork for the Virgin Islands, that is what I will do.
Wow, that was enlightening. I never thought about that. You're the first one I heard with this idea.
Yes.
And so thanks for that. And final question that I'm going to ask, and then anyone, we got a few minutes, so to wrap up, anybody interested in calling in at this time, the numbers are 340-773-0490 and 340-773-0390. The final question that I have is, I know that you have been working with the America 250. We recently celebrated America's 250th birthday this past July 4th. And you have also been having a conversation about us having a constitution. So I'd like to know your thoughts on us drafting the sixth constitution to replace, hopefully, the revised Organic Act of 1954. What ideas you have to ensure success, that this time will be the last time, the final time that we get a constitution that is approved by Congress. It has to be approved by Congress.
That's right. That's right.
And ratified by the people, the electorate specifically of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Right.
What ideas you would ensure our success this time?
So first, I wanted to thank this body of people in the convention, because these are delegates. These are people from both sides of the aisle, so
Mhm.
that they would come up with a document that is acceptable across all of those people. I put faith in that, right?
Mhm.
And then the next step is that it would go through the electorate, right?
Yes.
And then it would go to the president of the United States, who would then send it to over to Congress,
Right.
right? And again, manifesting a win, not being out of place, and asking for everybody's vote for Terry Hillenese and number 3 on the ballot. I would work with my fellow Congress members to take a look at this document and ensure that we get it to where we want to be if it is not ready upon arrival, that
Mhm.
we would work together to tweak it, to get it in the right place. Therein, we would have a constitution.
Excellent, because that's my thought too.
Yes.
Because the Congress can modify.
That's right.
It's based on the federal law, the public law
Mhm.
96-854. It does say in there Congress has the authority to approve, modify.
Yes.
There's nothing in there about no rejection.
That's
Okay,
right. Mhm.
they don't put a stamp and say reject, send back to the Virgin Islands.
Mhm.
What they will do is what happened in with the fifth constitutional draft. It was no formal rejection, but there was no approval. They give us a second bite of the apple
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
after numerous conventions, and even the third and the fourth drafts were approved by Congress, but both were rejected by the people.
Yes.
And I want to see success too,
That's right.
because we have to send a message that we are now ready, we're mature, we've been
Yes.
through this.
Yes.
How many times are you going to be doing the same
Exactly.
thing over and over
Mhm.
and expecting a different result?
That's right.
You know,
Yes.
you know what it says.
That's right.
You know what these guidelines are.
Yes.
You under the U.S. flag.
Yes. Mhm.
Everybody's equal under the U.S. flag based on the 14th Amendment.
Mhm. Mhm.
So specifically, is there any? I personally think before the draft is completed, and it's supposedly is in 2027,
Yeah, 2027. Yes.
and it's not too late, in my opinion. I think we could have amendments on the ballot. It would be non-binding because we are governed by the Revised Organic Act of 1954. So it will be non-binding, but it just a heads up.
Yes. Mhm.
I believe there should be 3 amendments
Mhm.
on the ballot coming in the general election
Mhm. November.
to get.
Mhm.
What amendments would you want to see on the ballot pertaining to having a constitution?
So a consideration for me,
Mhm.
I was born and raised here in the
Mhm.
Virgin Islands, and I think in a previous iteration, I think it had said that um, you had to be born and raised here to run for governor, right? I think I think that it would be fair to open that up. You know, anybody who moved here or was raised here could be able to run for governor. So that would be a consideration for me.
Mhm.
Anyone who came here,
Mhm.
whether they were born here or not,
Mhm.
who contributed to our society in a meaningful way, as far as I'm concerned, would be able to run for governor.
What are your thoughts on having an elected attorney general?
Oh, you know, I actually I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you know, it's instituted in many states. You know, whether
Mhm.
we remained as we are or whether we move to that model. If we did indeed move to that model, I would support it if it were, if it were voted upon and passed.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So if we put it on the ballot and that's what the majority of people want, so be it. We would have to adhere to the law. If we remain as is, so be it as well, is where I am.
Okay. And what message do you have for the undecided voters at this time? Because, and how would you, my prediction is going to be a low turnout. And the reason I'm saying that is look, and I know you're into statistics, look at the figures, the number of inactive registered voters
Yes.
is almost the same as active registered
Sure.
voters.
Yes.
So people obviously speaking to
not-
people, and people are
They're not
frustrated.
engaged. Yes.
They give up on government. Government is corrupt. They don't trust the politicians. They don't feel the votes count. How you think we could change that narrative and get more participation? What would you say to those undecided people, or those who don't even don't turn off to
Right,
vote?
Right. So
Period.
so for that demographic of people, I would say, every single thing that we do in life,
Hmm.
it's political. There is policy that supports it or does not support it. And so that is why it's important for you, for all of us, for everyone to engage in the process and make their voice and their vote count. It's key. Because if you stand back or you sit back and you lie down and you don't get up and take a shower and go and vote, the things that you are angry about will not be resolved. But if you get up and you shower and you put on your clothes and you go and vote, you can help to ensure your position is voted upon, is agreed upon, gets the consensus vote to change the narrative from where you are to where you want to be. The other key thing, the key element is engaging our young people. So not waiting till they're teenagers, but when they're 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 in their formative years, Crucian Educator, Miss Peterson, as I see with you and your grandson.
Oh yes, my grandson, I love Trump. The media played a big role in that.
Taking him on the boardwalk, taking him to the beach, and having these discussions with him in his formative years. Those things stick with us as adults, right?
Yes.
Involving him in sports. And some of these initiatives, like I'm talking about at the equestrian center, which will keep our kids away from crime and drugs. They're not interested in that because they're learning so many beautiful things at this equestrian center and meeting new friends and founding, surging and founding these solid relationships. These things matter. And these things, as we grow and we become educated and more sophisticated, we are able to train up our children in the way that they should go, in the right way. So, if we go back and pull up on our children 3, 4, 5, 6 in these formative years, we begin to transform the Virgin Islands, because we were once there, but we have pulled away from things like we're just getting back into the horse track, so we're getting there. So when I talk about that it's progression in a state of the Virgin Islands is in a state of progress because all of these infrastructural elements are beginning to resurface.
Well, I like you. I see a blazing light at the end of the tunnel. I think we all could actively engage and help to shape the destiny of the U.S. Virgin Islands through our vote. I want to thank you for being here today. And everyone listening, encourage others who are not interested in participating in the election process to do so. Primary election is on August 1st. The general election would be in November. And It's too late now to register to vote, but we have a general election. So everybody who has already registered, I'm urging you to participate. Your vote is your voice is your vote. So I want to thank our guest. She's number 3 on the ballot for
Delegate to
delegate to
Congress.
U.S. House of
Yeah.
Congress, Terry Helenies. It's been my pleasure and honor to have a very enlightening conversation today and at the table with Crucian Educator. Thanks for listening. Live, listen, learn, love, and levitate.